Hello again and welcome back. We're discussing the thawing relations between NATO and between Russia, all part of the United States' desire to open a new chapter in its ties with Moscow. Our guests in Manhattan, Kansas State, Dale Herspring, and in Moscow, Dmitry Babich. Dale Herspring, if we could start with you. We talk up this new approach from the United States. Is it really genuine, or is it just a change in rhetoric?
I think it's genuine. I think it's genuine to a point. I mean, there's rhetoric involved. There always is in diplomacy on all sides. But I think there's a genuine attempt to try and change things. It will not go. We're not talking about turning water into wine. We're talking about making significant changes that may benefit both sides. But both countries are going to follow their national interests. Neither is out to engaged in charity. And so it'll just simply be a matter of seeing how much give there is on both sides when it comes to these issues.
And what about Europe's view of all this? I mean, you can't really talk about Europe collectively as one, can you? Because lots of different countries have different loyalties, don't they?
Well, I've been reading, this morning I was reading the German press, and the last couple of days reading the German press. The German press is certainly very positive about it, has been very, the reaction to Clinton's visit, both in Europe and NATO and then into Russia, has been very positive. So at least from that perspective of that one country, I think that it's a movement forward.
Dmitry Babich, these arenas, if you like, of mutual interest, what's top of the list? Would it be Iran?
Well, certainly Russia and the United States can cooperate on Iran, they can cooperate on Afghanistan. And coming back to your question about Europe, I was reading Polish press in the last 2 or 3 days, and Polish press is very concerned. So indeed, there is huge difference of views in Europe, and you cannot talk about the European Union as a single entity. But certainly, the genuine interest of European Union is stabilization in Afghanistan and in Iran, and Russia can certainly be helpful in achieving that stabilization.
What would Russia need for it to play ball on that front?
Well, I can give you just one example. In Afghanistan, we have a huge problem, unemployment. When the first donors conference on Afghanistan was held 6 years ago, basically 7 years ago, the idea was to bring to Afghanistan modern Western factories. And of course it didn't work, because Afghans are not ready to work on them. But there are some old frozen Soviet projects there, which are actually useful for Afghanistan. There are old factories for producing construction equipment, which Afghans still know how to work on. So Russia suggested to unfreeze these projects and to work with it. But the West didn't accept, and the new Afghan government didn't accept. I think it was a mistake. Russia can be helpful there.
And what about Iran? The US wants Russia to cut back supplies for Iran's nuclear program. What would encourage Russia to play ball on that front?
Well, I can tell you that there are some contradictions between Russia and Iran. You can see it from the story of this infamous Bushehr atomic power station. Russia has been building it for about 15 years with Iranians, and still it cannot finish it. I think the reason is not just slow construction, but the reason is Russia is not interested in nuclear Iran. If Iran becomes nuclear, you look at the map where the United States is and where Russia is. Russia will certainly face a greater threat than probably the United States.
So, well, that's absolutely true. Dale Herspring, what do you think? Would you be confident that progress can be made in Iran via Russia putting pressure on Iran's nuclear program?
Well, there's not only the nuclear program, there's also the SA-300s. And I think what the United States is looking for is an indication that Russia is restraining itself vis-a-vis Iran. I think Mr. Babich is correct. As you know, as the Russians say, it's next to China, that they've waited for that long to finish the project. And I think that's, well, the people are well aware of that. Refusing to deliver the missiles and would be, I think, a sign. But I think it's going to have to be part of a much larger agreement, including, my guess is from the Russian side, the missiles in Poland.
Yeah, well, Mr. Babich just mentioned the discontent in Poland about this kind of thawing in ties. The problem is that if we meet Russian concerns on this, how do you not alienate the Polish and the Czechs, for that matter, who agreed at considerable political cost to host these defence systems?
That's a very fair question, and it's going to be a very difficult problem to deal with, as well as the Baltics. But I think, you know, that's just part of diplomacy, that one has to do it. In Poland, there's the American Army unit go in with it. It has its own anti-missile things. That's a possibility to leave that there. That's certainly not something I don't think is going to scare the Russians. But it's going to take a lot of diplomacy in dealing with those two countries, and no question about it, because an agreement has been made, a commitment's been made, and now you'd withdraw it.
But I guess the one thing that's to the advantage of Barack Obama is that he has no political investment in the missile defense system, does he? It's a legacy of the Bush term.
Well, it's true, but I think it's more important are the people around him. I frankly think that if you look at his national security team, you're not going to find any wild-eyed liberals or wild-eyed conservatives. I think they're basically down the center people, and they're hard-nosed. I think that he can say that we've got something else, and what will probably happen is, in response, the United States will upgrade further the Polish military or the Czech military and provide them with that kind of largesse in order to, as it were, buy them off.
Mr. Babiš, what about, you mentioned Afghanistan. There we've seen President Karzai looking more towards Moscow, which only kind of complicates matters, doesn't it?
Well, I think that basically Russia can help NATO in Afghanistan, and the only reason why Russia hasn't done more in the last few years is just NATO's attitude to Russia. I would remind you that Russia went through the same difficulties in Afghanistan in the 80s that the NATO is passing through now. I think it was NATO's arrogance when they said 6 years ago, oh, you came to Afghanistan as invaders and we are coming as liberators, so we're not going to have the same problems you had during the 80s. That turned out to be, you know, wishful thinking. So Russia can, of course, share experience and some technical expertise in Afghanistan.
Okay, there's another big arena, of course, in the world, the Middle East. To what extent do you think, gentlemen, that a unified Russian and US front is going to encourage changes there? Mr. Babiš.
Well, Russia has been an active player in the Middle East since the late 60s. Mostly we were on the Arab side during these conflicts. But basically right now Russia is very willing to help resolve the Gaza issue. We are not helping, I mean, Russia's help to Gaza is incomparable to the help that Gaza receives from United States or from the European Union. But diplomatically, we are more trusted than the United States by the Palestinians. That has to be acknowledged. And here Russia can play a very important role as an intermediary.
So, Mr. Herspring, is that how you see it?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognize that Russia is also increasing its relations with Israel. Most of the drones that they're ordering are coming from Israel. As far as the Middle East is concerned, yes, I think Russia can play an important role, but as they're saying in the American Naval Construction Battalions, the difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. And I think we're talking about the impossible, so it's going to take a little longer to do this. Even with both countries committed, it is an incredibly difficult problem. I mean, every American president since World War II has tried to figure out a way to resolve the problem. And as one of the things that the stage of diplomacy is there are some problems that are just too damn difficult to solve, and this may be one of them, at least given the positions both sides are in. But I think Mr. Babiš is right. I think certainly having a Russian-American united approach is better than having a segmented approach.
Okay, a question to both of you to finish up with, 30 seconds each, if you would. Is it possible that we could just be seeing the beginnings of what would be the formation of a very unlikely new world order, US and Russia, close partners?
I don't think so, but an improvement in relation between US and Russia is certainly possible.
Okay, well, that's short and sweet. Mr. Herspring, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree with Mr. Babiš more. I think he's absolutely right. I mean, I've spent enough time as a diplomat to know that Pollyannish solutions are not likely to occur. On the other hand, we can work together more than we have in the past. And I would just say that I come away with having watched and written newspaper articles and so forth on the recent meeting with encouraged.
And 10 years ago, would you have thought it was possible, gentlemen?
10 years ago, relations between Russia and the US were much better. So certainly, I mean, I would not imagine a world dominated by United States and Russia again, but I think an improvement in relations was needed in the late 90s, and it is needed now. It is in everyone's interest, including Poland and Czech Republic.
Briefly, Mr. Herspring.
I agree. I mean, 10 years ago, the United States looked upon Russia as a backwater, going nowhere, doing nothing. I think one of the credits to Mr. Putin is he has brought Russia back. He's increased what the Russians call privedение stabilnost, stability and predictability into the country. They're right now going through a difficult economic period, as we are. But I think that Russia has now emerged as a more important player. Certainly 10 years ago, I can tell you in Washington, nobody took Russia seriously. I think they do now.
Gentlemen, thanks very much indeed for your time. An excellent discussion, and thank you for watching this edition of Inside Story. We're always pleased, of course, to have your comments and suggestions. Feel free to email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.